try and flesh out, open out the projection manifestation model that's there at the moment, and then also offer some of the mechanical components of true manifestation. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to Going Dotty. I'm Tracy again, and in today's video I want to give an alternative breakdown to the concept of manifestation. So let's crack into it. One of the things that I find about the kind of mainstream spiritual system that seems to be out there is that it's not always necessarily very realistic. You know, there's a lot of concepts within the spiritual industry that are easy to say, they're easy sells, they're easy concepts that people want to pick up on because in following the path of least resistance, you don't have to do as much work or put in as much effort to yield the results that you want to yield when you go down these easier routes. But I think that this can be very detrimental really, because if you have somebody who is new to something or they're just learning about something for the first time and they come across a way such as manifestation of something that's been overly simplified. You know, manifestation nowadays seems to be like think your way into a new life and into a new world. And if you think certain thoughts and if you hold on to that thought thought is going to happen for you. And I think when we break this down, what we can essentially say what that is that's projection. You know, people are espousing or teaching that you can essentially project yourself into a new life and into a new world. And that's very dangerous for our mental health. You know, I think if you had a pool of 1,000 people, there's a certain amount of people who would indeed be able to successfully project themselves into a new physical outlay. You know, a lot of the manifestation really, when you break it down, seems to focus on materialism, living in a nice house, having a nice car, having an abundance of money and materialism really. But there's a lot of elements of life that seem to be forgotten or left by the wayside when it comes to that. You know, when they're talking about manifesting, they don't really talk about having good quality people in your life. They don't necessarily talk about having good, beautiful moments. They don't necessarily talk about being able to pursue your dreams, your wishes, your creative skills. They don't seem to talk about manifesting and embodying the business or the career of your dreams. It always seems to focus on this materialism. Think about something that you want and you can get it. Think about somewhere you want to go and you will be there. And what also happens within this is if we have 1,000 people who try this version of manifesting, which is really projecting, there's a certain amount of people that will achieve that, but there's a lot of people who won't. So first of all, what happens to those people who don't achieve that? What does that open up in their lives and their worlds? What sort of mental health experiences are people going to have when they try to project and they're not successful within that projection? And then the other element is for people who are successful in attaining that, physical manifestation of manifesting, can they sustain that manifestation? They get themselves somewhere, but does it live up to the hype of what was in their imagination beforehand? And again, both of these are two different ways of speaking about the collapse of the illusion. I thought it was going to be a certain way and then it wasn't. How do you deal with that? And is it necessarily a person's individual fault or total responsibility when they were actually taught quite a complex concept in an oversimplified manner? It makes sense when we're on this journey and we're looking at these things that we fall into the things that we want to believe, that we want to align with, and that we want to be true. It's not really, I don't think, the total responsibility of the person who takes all of this on board, because a lot has to be said for the person who shares this kind of information. If somebody isn't given the full picture, if they're oversimplifying something, there's a lot of responsibility on that individual's door, certainly from my perspective. And the purpose of this video is to just try and flesh out, open out the projection manifestation model that's there at the moment, and then also offer some of the mechanical components of true manifestation and a bit of an alternative to that. So first of all, we want to have a look at understanding what projection really is. And when we're looking at the toxic conscious models of the ego and the narcissist, when we're breaking that down, we look at projection and mirroring as being two primary creational tools that the ego and the narcissist use in order to be able to generate for themselves what they want in their life and in their world. Projection and mirroring are like these tools of the psyche. They're ways that people hold themselves within life, and they're ways that people move their energy to elicit a response from the external. So we're not going to be going into mirroring in this video. I do recommend that you check out that video that's available in the Toxic Ego series at the moment if you want to look into that in a little bit more detail. But projection is essentially this process where we have an image of the self. We throw it out into the world. We act as if we are that. And we are essentially hoping that the world external will uphold that vision for us. It's kind of like saying if we hold ourselves in a certain manner, that people will treat us in a certain way. And what we are doing here when we're projecting in this sort of way, or if an individual is projecting, you're really outlaying and outsourcing the building blocks of your own creativity, and you're resting them on the world external. And that's not a very healthy model to go down, because you're relying on other people upholding that reality for you. You're giving your power and the source of your capacity out and over to other people. The door just opened in the wind, I suppose. You're giving your power away and you're outsourcing your own creative capacity onto other people in the hope that they will uphold and sustain the energy so that you can live through the experience of that. So projection really, it wouldn't, to my mind, be a healthy psychological tool to be utilising. You're not coming from your own true power. You're not coming from a sustainable resource. It's kind of like building a house of cards. In order for your life to manifest through this concept of projection, you are relying on other people upholding that projection, like the building blocks of your reality. So that's like a house of cards. It's eventually going to crumble. And I think what's also quite interesting is to consider, if we're manifesting through projection, if we see ourselves in like a role, a position or a place, and if we act as if, and if we pretend we're there, and if we fake it until we make it, there is perhaps a certain amount of that is, natural and useful in the psychological toolkit of oneself. But to be overly reliant on that and to be depending on that, for that to be, how you operate, what happens in your life, in your world, I think that there's a lot of difficulties with that. I think we can also talk about, whether that's honest and truthful. I think one of the things that you can come across quite a lot within the business scene is people projecting themselves. I'm this, I'm that. And what you realise if you look at the back end of their business model or their business structure is they're not really embodying at all that which they say that they are successfully doing. An example here would be, if you come across somebody who's operating in the alternative sphere, like maybe they're a life coach or maybe they're a healer, and they're postulating themselves, they're presenting themselves to the world as if they are this. And then what you find in the long road is that they're not very successful, they're scrambling themselves. And I think that this is very visible. It's something I come across a lot in my own kind of, I suppose, digital feed because of the things that I'm tuned into, is there seems to be a lot of like life coaches and healers who talk about when they had a business and they were really struggling and their clients were really successful but they weren't. And what I find interesting, and then they've found a solution, they have a secret formula and they're trying to share that. And I find that really interesting because what they're essentially saying in an indirect manner is, in an earlier time of my career, I lied and I projected and, I pretended that I was something, or I wore the face of being something that I wasn't actually fully being. And now that I figured out the magic formula, I can teach you how to manifest this in your own life and world as well. And it's fair enough as well to say that in the beginning of a business, or when somebody is starting off in something, there is a period of time where this is allowed. But I suppose it's how you come across this information, it's how people share it. But it is something that happens a lot in the world nowadays. People like to give the impression that there's something that they really aren't beneath the surface. And there's the difficulty as well of, if we take this person on board, You know, we take in the fullness of someone. We don't just take in the surface level, and we don't just get to accept the things that suit us and reject the rest either. You know, a full being is a full being. And if we are interacting with somebody and that interaction is only true on a superficial level, that's not beneficial for us in the long road either. You know, I've covered this off in another video, so I'll link up to that above, and you can go back to that if you want to understand that concept in a little bit more detail. So that's it for today's video on manifestation. Part 2 of this video will be available next week. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys again.